Hi, everyone. Today we are joined by a true powerhouse in retirement policy, Will Hansen. With a foot in both public and private sectors, Will brings a truly unique 360-degree perspective to this table. From his time on Capitol Hill as an ERISA counsel to advocating for plan sponsors across the country with his work through Plan Sponsor Council America and ARA, American Retirement Association, he has had a front row seat to the evolving landscape of retirement policy. Will, we are so thrilled to have you here today.
That was an amazing intro. I don't know about all that, but thank you, Rebecca. It's great to be here. It's a casual day for me. So we're in some athleisure wear. My dog Jefferson might make an appearance. But that's just what adds to the fun of this podcast here, right?
And our office corgi Murphy is probably also going to say hello to the Amazon person at some point so the two doggies can have a barking conversation together.
There we go.
Will, as Executive Director of PSCA, Plan Sponsor Council of America, for the past 5 years, I cannot believe how fast that has gone by, you have witnessed significant regulatory changes affecting retirement plans, to say it lightly. Which recent policy developments do you believe has had the most profound impact on plan sponsors, and what changes do you anticipate on this interesting horizon?
So for the past 5 years, I think the biggest change that we've seen in the retirement policy landscape is the word that almost plan sponsors hate to hear now is called Secure 2.0, or words, I guess that is, since it's two words. Secure 2.0 stresses them out. And the reason I think that is because there was, for the first time in a very long time, so many options that are just like laid out on a table for a plan sponsor to decide whether or not a certain provision is appropriate or not for their plan, and ultimately for their participants. So anything where from obviously the student loans to the student loan matching contributions to the emergency savings provisions, two of them that were in there, a number of different distribution options that were added in there, to Rothification of employer contributions, and all those are optional for the most part. And they're like, kind of like, all right, well, what do I do? How do I do it? And then they're at a lot of it depends on what can their record keeper, implement, what can their payroll company, implement for them. So I think, it's a huge shift. A lot of the provisions are not seeing a huge, uptake in adoption now. And I think it's because there were so many options available.
Sure.
And I do think that, over the coming years, we're going to start to see less of the words Secure 2.0 and more of a focus on those individual provisions, and how employers are starting to slowly kind of adopt and add those into their plan.
I did not know that was the two words that kept plan sponsors up at night. That's...
it's not I think that they just got, inundated with so much. And so like that, I think, even at PSCA, we're still using it on occasion, but when it comes to webinars or sessions at our conference, things like that, we're less using Secure 2.0 and more just kind of focusing on the underlying provision and educating folks, on it, just to ease them into it a little bit.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah. We're working on a guide right now. It's called Pros, Cons, and Considerations, and it takes into effect Secure 1, Secure 2, Extra, PPA, and then kind of peels back the onion on each one of them and then goes through the employee arc. So like enrollment through retirement, so retirement income at the end of it. And like, what are the provisions along the way that can strengthen the retirement plan? And you don't have to have them. It's completely up to you, but just document like the pros and the cons and the considerations of it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tip on not using Secure 2.0 as in our titles, because we don't want to We don't want to cause fear or
You
anxiety. We
know,
want to calm it
marketing
down.
expert Will here. I'm just throwing out some, helpful advice on.
I love it. So, drawing from your unique perspective as both a former Senate staffer and as a lobbyist, how would you characterize the current relationship between policymakers and plan sponsors? Where do you see opportunities for possibly more productive collaboration?
There is definitely a divide there. So we
Mm-hmm.
don't see, in a lot of cases, plan sponsors, HR professionals having that direct relationship with elected officials. At
Yeah.
Plan Sponsor Council of America, we do our best, obviously, through our lobbying team
Mm-hmm.
to put them forward. But there is still kind of that direct divide, and there's always a little bit of I think, a hesitancy. So even as my time
Yeah.
as a Senate staffer, I think people are generally Americans are for some reason afraid to just even connect with their elected official, even though it's so easy. Like you can just send them a letter. You can drop them a letter, drop them an email, and you're probably going to get a response, hopefully.
Yeah.
And for some reason, there's that blockade. And so I can see that too when it comes to plan sponsors or even others out there where they just don't want to engage because maybe they just don't understand the process or recognize how easy it is for them to engage. So I would love it if there were, more people that are out there on the plan sponsor world and others engaging directly with elected officials to kind of
Yeah.
educate them more on, the ins and outs of our 401k system, 403b system, because in the end, it's only going to benefit, the participants that are out there. When you look at larger companies too, in particular, or mid-sized companies,
Yeah.
sometimes HR policies are not the number one, two, three, four, five issue that they want to lobby their elected officials on. Obviously they have a business, they need to operate, they need to provide for their employees
Yeah.
through profits, and so those sometimes take top tier. And the other provisions that are out there, policy priorities, are then on a lower tier. So it is trying to find that unique, I guess, balancing act between making sure that we're whether your HR professionals working for a large company, mid-sized company, are putting forward policies that better the business, but then
Yeah.
also better the lives of their employees as well.
Makes complete sense. Also, a good
Yeah.
reason to attend the PSCA National Conference each year as well. So that way those issues come
Yes.
to the forefront.
Yes, it will be. So, which is in just a couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Uh, well, having worked as an HR professional for a huge Fortune 200 company, what do you consider to be some of the biggest disconnects between retirement policy, the way it's crafted in Washington, D.C., versus some of the practical realities of implementing these policies in real life in the workplace?
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to the earlier question too, and how I wish there were more plan sponsors, HR professionals, or others that just have worked in the real world
Yeah,
outside of the DC bubble that come to the DC bubble and
sure.
tell them how, hey, this is how it really operates. I might be the only person in America, there might be a few others, who actually worked in the Senate
Mm-hmm.
and then went and worked in HR. And I will say I'm
Oh,
probably the only person in the country that probably supported the Affordable Care Act. As a Senate staffer, the senator I worked for voted for it. And then I actually had to go implement the Affordable Care Act, overseeing retirement, but also health and welfare benefits for a large
yeah,
company. And it was a pain. It was a pain in the you know what. And it kind of leads to where I'm getting at here is this disconnect is that, even when I was a Senate staffer prior to being an HR professional, I would in my head look at something on paper, a legislative policy, and say, oh, yeah, that should be really easy to implement,
sure.
at a company. This should be no problem. These companies have, wonderful systems that will, easily allow them to, track some hours here or there, or, change a payroll line here or there. And then I went and worked in HR and I'm like, oh, okay. Everyone's still working on Excel spreadsheets from the 1990s here, and there aren't really a lot of great systems. And I work at a pretty good sized company. So what are people at mid-sized and smaller companies doing? It's probably, an even more antiquated,
Yeah.
system with less resources. So I think that probably is the biggest disconnect, is that there is, people who are making policy.
Hmm.
I was one of them. And I had no real world experience. And I wish there was now kind of like a system in place where we could take a lot of policymakers and be like, all right, go work at a company for 6 months, a year, and kind of figure out
Yeah.
what is how it works in corporate America, and hopefully that would kind of just make it a little bit easier when it came for policymakers in developing new policies to kind of figure out, okay, what's doable,
Right.
what isn't going to be a huge burden, on the company to implement any sort of new policy.
Going back to Secure 2.0 for a second, employer Roth contributions.
Mhm.
When that came out, I was like, this is amazing. Huge proponent of Roth. And then how do you do it?
Yeah,
That just seems to be this like giant question mark. And we've gotten some guidance, but it's very complicated. There's you have to save different forms. How do you file your taxes? Who's paying? So it's great on paper.
yeah.
Wonderful. How do you do it? We'd love to hear more on that in the coming years around it.
Well, and the other Roth provision is a primary example of the
Yeah.
mandatory one, that basically forces anyone earning 145K or more,
Hmm.
their catch-up contributions to be Roth. We advocated the Hill to be like, please eliminate that 145K, or link it to some other limit that
Yeah.
already is in place that employers are already tracking.
Sure, HC
And
or
we got
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
something, and we got pushback, and we're like, and it was unfortunate, but that is a good example of like, I wish some of those policymakers would be like, realize like this is impossible, but next to impossible to
Sure.
implement. And just throwing out a brand new limit that they now have to track with different types of wages that fall into it. It's not simple. You know.
No.
Yeah.
We were one of our clients were kind of joking around about this, and I said, picture a guess who board. And they were like, I go, well, we're going to talk about the Roth catch-up contribution. But like, picture a guess who board. So like, okay, so you have all the little card tiles up, and then it's like, okay, put down all the people who are below uh, 50, right? So then it's like, okay, all the folks that are below 50, and then all the folks that are below 145,000, and then all the folks who have maxed out their 401k plan and are doing catch-up contributions. Who do you have left? It's like one person out of like a giant organization. And it's like, is that really worth trying to implement? And it was
Right.
like, we like laughed about it in one of our, like, how do we explain this? And then we did a kind of analysis of, how much do we need to lean into this with like articles and guides and presentations and slides? And we're like, we could have like a bullet point, about it. It's
Right.
important. It's
Right.
good to know, but how many people is it actually going to impact in the end?
Yeah, that's true.
So let's dive into a topic that keeps getting lots and lots of attention. How do you see AI and emerging technologies transforming the way HR professionals manage retirement plans? And then are there any specific innovations that could make plan administration more efficient or improve participant outcomes?
Yeah. AI, I affectionately call it Terminator. Affectionately call it Terminator. It's a joke. It does, like, sometimes when I'm using it, it is like scary how good it is. We've been doing a lot of PSCA to kind of just educate HR professionals about how it's not scary, with a little bit of training, on how to prompt, some of those AI technologies out there. It can really help, have you just do your job more efficiently. So then obviously when it comes to the HR landscape, managing retirement plans, we're starting to see some of the record keepers and other providers, implement some tools which are really cool on the back end. Some of them being like on the participant service side, servicing the participants' queries and requests.
Mm-hmm.
We started to see a lot more on the financial wellness side too,
Mm-hmm.
which will be interesting. So I think those are all just ripe for growth, and
Yeah.
hopefully will start to educate participants as well. What I've been working on in specifically for the past year or so, and we're going to be launching a product here in a couple months, is for the HR professional, because that's the one kind of area where we haven't seen, I think, a lot of product development in, is like, how can we help the HR professional
Love this.
more efficiently administer their retirement plan, behind the scenes? Because when you think about it, when I think about when I was an HR professional, I had documents on my share drive, I had documents on maybe a personal drive, documents in that file drawer down the hallway, documents at a storage center somewhere, because
Yep.
when you have a 401k plan that's 20, 30, 40 years old, you got a lot of documents associated with it, a lot of regulatory changes, legal changes, annual reports, 5500s. So trying to find a way to centralize all those documents, but then also make those documents searchable, and using AI technology to get answers within seconds rather than minutes, hours, or even days or weeks. And so that's the one area that I think that we do need to focus on a little bit more. So I'm pretty excited. Hopefully here in the next few months we'll launch that product.
Can't wait. So excited for you. Well, let us know in any way to help promote it, and we'll get it out there so more HR folks can feel that they are organized in a way that they can sleep peacefully at night.
Yeah.
One last thing. So the 401k system has evolved significantly over these last 50 plus years. So based on your advocacy work, what fundamental changes would you propose to strengthen retirement security for American workers over this next decade?
The one proposal that we need is we do need a requirement that most employers provide a plan.
Sure.
I think the industry has done an awesome job at standing up, products that are easy for a small business to, implement. Limited time on their part, limited compliance, and low cost. Capitol Hill has done a great job of giving the tools to those small businesses to decrease that compliance as through offering the new products or allowing for the new products like PEPs, starter Ks, and then also the tax credits to basically make it free for them to provide these plans. So I think now next is really that requirement that most employers need to just do it. Add that one payroll line item to your Excel spreadsheet or whatever system that you're using to help your employees, save. And a lot of these new products don't even require employer contributions, to be made from them. So I think that's primary. But with that, and that's when I get on my soapbox here, the 401k system is successful for those who have access to a plan. And I think everyone knows it because everyone wants to look to our system and say, hey, how do we tap into that system? Because there's a lot of money there. So let's add a student loan matching provision, which we support. We understand the background of that. Saw some new legislation out there recently that would kind of enhance the ability for individuals to tap into their 401k if they're a first-time home buyer. So tapping into some money that you've saved with some employer contributions to help you tap into that. So all kind of reasonable, but I think all kind of points to, well, hey, that's a very successful system. But with all that said, we still need people to save. They got to have money in a retirement account. And we have a lot of other issues in America right now when it comes to housing costs, healthcare costs, wages. And if we do want to ensure that people are saving for a lifetime of needs, we need to make sure they're at least able to save. And so I think along with, a requirement that, most employers provide a plan, I think our elected officials need to, recognize that there's some other economic factors out there that are impacting people's ability to save, and they need to figure out how to rectify some of those to ensure that they are saving the right amount of money for them.
Complete sense.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Will. All right. Well, one last question. If you were to have a crystal ball and kind of predict in 2026, do you have any guess as to what retirement policy might dominate these headlines?
2026. Ooh, all right. So we're in 25 right now. We are going to be having a big tax bill done this year. It's going to be a partisan tax bill. So Republican Party have the House, the Senate, the White House. So they're going to do, a major tax bill most likely. 2026, there's two options probably. They could do another partisan effort, using what's called the reconciliation process. We can do a whole other podcast on the reconciliation process, so I won't go down that road,
Okay.
but it's possible. Or if Republicans think that if they don't show some sort of bipartisanship, because it may impact their election, the midterm elections in 26, they may say, okay, well, maybe we should show that we work with Democrats and do some bipartisan bills just so that we can say, yep, we work together across the aisle. There's a lot of independents, like that. And so independents really are the key voting bloc that can sway the election, left or right. And the Republicans only have a couple seat majority, right now. So it's already on shaky ground. So if they go down that road, we could see, maybe they want to put together a Secure 3.0. Retirement policy is one of the very few areas where there is bipartisan, efforts. Pension Protection Act, Secure 1.0, Secure 2.0,
Yep.
EGTRA, GUST. I'm really going back to the 90s here now.
Don't show people
Pretty
how
much
old you are.
everything has been bipartisan. The only partisan retirement bill of the past decade or so was a multi-employer bill that was done, I think, in like 2013 or so.
Okay.
So that's that's one area, and there's some ideas floating out there on Secure 3.0. There's things like right now, the state secure choice plans, there's 17 states that have a mandate that you have to require a plan. Not all the states are up and running. We support these state programs or great public-private partnership, but those are Roth IRA accounts. And right now, you cannot roll over a Roth IRA to a 401k plan. So we're looking at legislation to allow for a rollover from a Roth IRA to your Roth bucket in your 401k plan.
Yep.
There's a few other things there out in retirement income landscape to try to enhance retirement income, lifetime income products as well. Then there's like small little things like, hey, if I'm a plan sponsor or even if I'm an advisor helping out them, an auditor helping to fill out the Form 5500, why do I have to fill out that Form 5558, every year for an extension? We all do it. So let's just eliminate, the Form 5558, little things that we could look at. So if anyone has any ideas, any listeners are looking for new legislative ideas, all ears, we got our list going, and, would love some new ideas that we can put forward, new reasonable ideas that we can put forward.
Love that. Thanks, Will. Well, Will, thank you so much for sharing your incredible insight into policy, people, and kind of that progress behind America's retirement system. Your experience across the public and the private sector, it truly adds depth to this conversation, and it's clear that your work is meaningfully making a difference for plan sponsors, advisors, and participants alike. And then for our listeners here today, if you want to learn more about Will's work, Will, how can folks contact you?
Oh, yeah. They can go to psca.org. So Plan Sponsor Council of America is our website. I'm the executive director of that. If you're interested more on the government affairs side, which I also lead government affairs for the American Retirement Association, you can go to araadvocacy.org, which has all of our comment letters, position papers, and a lot of other great information out there, just kind of like on what we're working on at the moment.
Awesome. And I'll make one shameless plug here. If you are not part of the ARA Pact, please consider joining it and making a small contribution, which goes a very long way to the great work that Will and his team is doing. Well, as always, thank you everyone so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us to continue to bring insightful conversations like this one today with Will. Until then, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep moving retirement forward. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to today's 401k Marketing Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of our guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of 401k Marketing. The content has been available for informational and educational purposes only. We hope you enjoyed.